Okay, so what in the chat box, the pictures you saw, can we write in the chat box the pictures we saw in the last 3 slides? And please write them together. A yummy cake, a package gift, 2 smiling women. Fantastic. A beautiful cake, a gift box, 2 smiling ladies, 2 ladies smiling. Fantastic. Okay, great. Do we have any more answers? I forgot to record the session, but as usual, the recording is usually for me, not for us. Benro says a gift box, 2 happy women, and a cake. Okay. Benro sort of changed the order a little, but thank you for at least writing them correctly. I love the fact that you said 2 happy women. That was interesting. Fabulous. Yeah, so that's what happens, right? Even here now, guess what you had to do to write it in sequence? You had to think, right? You had to think and say, oh, I need to write this in sequence. Right? Why? Because it is so direct, and I'm giving you so many rules already to it. The reality is that for creative writing, sometimes the children just may not remember the sequence. The children also may not remember exactly everything that happened. So it is important that when you're talking creative writing, you let the students know that this is not about how much you remember. It is a creative writing piece. Okay, so it is remember what you can and just write about your feelings. Okay, you want to be able to connect the children's feelings to the piece of writing that they are about to get into. Fantastic. Some more descriptive answers. Like Ianu says, the first picture was a well layered, delicious red and white cake. The second was a gift box with flowers beside it and a shoe. The third was 2 women smiling. And Mr. Dekule says a picture of a red velvet cake with a slice. True. A gift box surrounded by flowers with a pair of shoes by the corner. And two beautifully dressed women enjoying a good laugh, standing in front of a brown backdrop. Damilola says that she saw a beautiful, creamy, icy cake. The second is a picture of a beautiful gift box with a pair of shoes by the side. And the third is of happy women. Fantastic. Thank you so much. It is important that we realize that when we get into creative writing, what you're really asking people to do is to remember the moment again. Okay? But that really, when you think about it, is that creative writing. A lot of the time, that's narrative. Once you begin to put rules in creative writing, you're moving it out of the domain of creativity. Okay, and that's very important to remember. Does it mean that they should not have rules? They should. But we need to understand that there's a process with it. When children are doing their first draft, that first creative draft, where they just pour out so much, leave them alone. It is the space, the domain of creativity. If we break it up too much and make it too rigid, the children are going to see the rules, okay, and not have opportunity to enjoy the things that they enjoyed based on the prompt, the creative writing prompt. Okay, so in essence, creative writing is really putting your imagination on paper or saying it out. If you give children a chance to speak, maybe send a voice note of the creative voice note, but that's really what it is. Right, it is artistic writing, and it is not governed by you, the teacher. It's really about the students. Okay, it's how they saw it, it's how they enjoyed it, it's how they played with it, it's the fun that they had with it, it's conveying things that happen, but in their own creative way, in their own way. That really is what creative writing is. So you need to be careful not to be restrictive. Yes, there are rules. Yes, they must use the proper handwriting. Yes, they must. But that first draft, like I said, that first draft is almost like a sacred draft. Leave it alone. Let them just write when they're doing that first draft. Otherwise, you lose the entire purpose of creative writing. All right. And why do you need to really leave them like that? It is a mode of self-expression, right? If you look at the way some poets write, if you read some poetry, you would wonder how this person was able to touch their heart so deeply and how it is so moving. Same thing with music, right? All of those things are artistic. You watch some movies and you're like, oh my goodness, That is all creativity coming alive. And it is really important that is the essence of creative writing as well. It is almost in the domains of these things that I've called music, a really good piece of acting on screen, poetry. That really is where creative writing is also sitting. So if we're looking at it as a mode of self-expression, then should you stifle it? No. It unleashes creative energy, right? Because some of the children, that's what they're going to be in the future, writers. And the only way to connect them to that gift that they carry is by allowing them a mode of expression. And so that is really important. It does stimulate the imagination. If you tell them, imagine, which is why, depending on the stage of creative writing that you are, sometimes you have to give the children prompts. Okay? You have to give them prompts and say, what do you think? Imagine, what if, ask them, give them those prompts, or say things like, oh, I was walking down the road and then all of a sudden, can you tell me what you think I saw? Let them begin to write, right? That is stimulating their imagination. It enhances thought processing skills. Some of our children in our classrooms are not thinking, right? And that's one of the things I'm hoping to get through across with this session, that we need to begin to let our students begin to think. A lot of our children are not thinking, and that is detrimental to their learning. If they're not thinking, they are unable to process. That means that when it comes to the world that we are living in right now, because that's the future, thinking is a big deal. And that means we have shortchanged the children already because we're not allowing them to think. So we must give them a chance to think. It also enables thinking out of the box. Sometimes come into the classroom with an empty box and tell them there's something in this box. It's not empty. It's not shaking. It's not whatever. You can even put some coins inside and let it shake, or some stones or something, and tell them, write about what you think is in this box and how you will feel when I open this box. Let me see you guys start writing. And you can even tell them, a few of them, to get up and talk about what they feel about the box, right? Totally out of this world. You would be amazed at what those children will say. But what are you doing? You're trying to connect their thoughts, their feelings. You're trying to open up their imagination. Okay, so it's very important that we sort of do those kind of exercises. And these are other other thing other benefits for creative writing. Emotional development, boosts confidence, gives a sense of pride. I wrote that, I did that. And then it really is a fun leisure activity. So please try it today. Next week. Have people just go ahead and tell them something is in this box, or you hold up a curtain, maybe bring your wrapper from home one day and bring a child or two and tell them to stand behind the curtain that your wrapper forms, and tell them, guys, I need you to write about what you think these children are doing here. And let the children be laughing and giggling. For some weird reason, just put it in there and let's see what they begin to do. For a lot of children, depending on the age of the children, they need a connection. They need it to be concrete, or they cannot see the abstract. All right, so it's really important that we begin to think and say to ourselves, how do I make this more concrete? Even you and I, think about it. The best books that you enjoy, that they're the books that stimulate your emotions. They're the books that you can connect with. Those are the books that we enjoy reading. That's why it's so, when sometimes I have to read a book that has to do with some domain that I'm learning, I'm like, hi, 140 pages, you see me reading and sweating. But a 400 book of the romance novel of absolute rubbish, you see me, a few hours, I'm done with it, right? Because guess what? It's like, but there's nothing inside, all a lie, right? Pure fiction. But the one that is supposed to move my intelligence a little higher and connects me with some of the spaces that I want to be, I'm not spending that time reading. Why? Abstractness. So you must make it concrete. It is important that you make it concrete. And these are the different types of writings that we find. We find plays, we find movies and television scripts, we find novellas, songs, like I mentioned, short stories, speeches, memoirs. You can even draw a timeline in your classroom. So you can do, let me annotate. I'm just going to annotate this part. You can come into your classroom one day and on the board, draw something. On another board, maybe draw a pot or a plate And then you can then draw maybe a house. My house is funny. My cup is funny as well. This, my bottle is also funny. And then you can then draw a girl or a boy or a dog, a cat, doesn't matter, on this last slide. And what you want to do is talk to the children and tell them, oh, this class, I'm going to break you guys up into 4 parts. The first part, all of these things are connected. This is a bottle, that is a cup, this is a house, and that is a girl or a boy, whatever you want it to be. Now, all these things are connected, but I want the 4 of you to write 4 different stories about these different parts. So I need somebody to, you guys on this side. So split up the classroom. That is incorporating movement in the classroom. It is incorporating excitement. The children will be excited to do that. Of course, they are moving because maybe they've been sitting for hours. And so you want them to move around. And you tell them, so I need you guys here to write about the bottle. I need you guys here to write about the cup. I need you on this side to write about the house. And I need you guys right here to write about this. What are they doing? What color is it? What is inside? What would they use it for? How many rooms? Add all those things and let them start to write. When you're done, you can then find a way to bring all these stories together. That in itself is such a fantastic exercise. That is how you stimulate the children to get interested in writing. If you want children to write, you must capture their interest. You must make it concrete. I see at my age, exactly, that age group is just pictures. It's just, I can imagine that you are dealing with really young children, Ayoni Mofe, and so it really is about, the sight at that time. They need to really get literally all of their senses working, or they're not going to connect with it. But you see, that is the beginning of creative writing, right? That is the beginning of writing. If children cannot see, first of all, with their mind's eye, and then picture what they see, they cannot put it down. It's literally impossible. All right, so these are the 5 elements of creative writing, right? It can be writing a short story, a long story. They're the 5 elements that we must look at. Where did it happen, right? That's the setting. The character, who are the people in there? The conflict doesn't necessarily mean bish, 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 bish. Conflict is really what, what are the 2 different types of thought processes that are happening within that story. The plot, again, is important. You're thinking about sequencing. You're thinking about the connection of the character, the setting and conflict. That's what you're looking at when you're looking at the plot. And then the theme, okay? That is also important. The theme sometimes can be the morale of the story. It can be the big picture. What do you want people to learn from it? All right. Now, we talked about the fact that we're going to look at the beginning when we were talking. I said to you guys, when you think creative writing, you're thinking imagination, okay? And the thing about creative writing is if you try and stifle it, you have moved into another type of writing domain, okay? Because you cannot get the children to understand and connect the way you want them to understand and connect. So that is something that we must pay attention to. Now, when we go into more technical writing, that's a different case. But when you're thinking about creative writing, it is honestly is based on their imagination. The purpose is to just write, to entertain, and they're meant to enjoy what they're writing, and the reader as well is also meant to enjoy it. It typically can be narrative, but it doesn't have to always be narrative. It doesn't have to always be a narrative. It can actually be a clear new story that is descriptive that they're talking about, okay? So it doesn't necessarily have to be, all right? It gives us a theme, a message, or a lesson. And any story would do this, but the most important thing about creative writing is the fact that it's based on imagination and does not really follow any rules or pattern per se, okay? Till you then move from your first draft and go into your second draft. At that time, then we can begin to bring in the rules. But at that first stage, you don't really want to bring in a lot of rules because you don't want to stifle them. We're going to go from here and go into the different techniques for creative writing and how to stimulate creative writing with our students in class. But first, let me tell you guys about the School Rewired conference that is happening in August. Okay, it's going to be an amazing conference. It's happening in August, 3 days. August 17th, 18th, and 19th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day. We have over 27 sessions for everybody, really. Us as teachers needed the finance and leadership Every single person needs it, and it's virtual. The same way you and I are talking right now, and I'm in another part of the world. Everybody's in different parts of the world. That is how the conference is going to be. Last year we had over 250 participants. It was fantastic. It was a great session, and this year is even going to be better. It's going to be bigger. All right, so that is what it is. If you pay before the 30th of June, you only pay 7,000 naira. After that, till August 7th, you pay 7,000, and then it goes to 15,000 naira. So you want to grab the early bird discount and pay now. What we do with a lot of our training sessions is to provide free or literally very cheap trainings for as many people as possible, because for us the vision is reach as many people as we can with the message of good practice in the classroom, good practice in our schools. All right, so that is the purpose of this. UT is going to drop a chat, a link that you can use to chat with her if you want to take this forward, and she'll be more than happy to support you through that process. Now, let's go straight back into creative writing. I said at the beginning that creative writing is like dating. You see somebody you like, you go forward. You don't like, you walk away. And that's how creative writing is. Unfortunately, it's either the child sees and they like, or they see, or they don't see, and there's a block, because you as a teacher is expecting them to write something down. And it's literally, it's difficult. Let me not say it's impossible. It's difficult when you cannot touch the child's imagination to ask them to imagine. It's impossible. You also have some children in your classroom, whether you like it or not, right? That are very logical in their thinking. They just cannot imagine. Which, for those sort of children, that's why you need the prompts. Those sort of children, that's why you need the box that is empty. That's why you need all the drama, right? Because they can connect with that. It removes a level of abstraction by making it concrete. And then maybe they're able to then say, oh, this happened to me, and go ahead. And I have that issue with my son. You know, my son will say, but mommy is lying. I say, what do you mean he's lying? You say, did it really happen? I say, it's creative. It's fiction. Sorry, that is fiction. It doesn't happen. Fiction doesn't happen. Just write it, you know. And for him, for my son, what we had to do was create mind maps. So for a long time, the only way we could really get my son to create and write was through mind maps. But once he got that, it was easier for him to then go into the logic of it, because he understood, okay, you know what, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do that, right? And there are children like that in your classroom, which is why you as a teacher needs to spend the time understanding who your students are. We've talked about student profile. Well, we haven't talked about student profile in this group. We're going to do that maybe next month. We'll talk about student profile. You know, we'll do it on WhatsApp. Maybe we'll have a WhatsApp session like we had, I think it was earlier this month, we had a WhatsApp session. So we can do that in our WhatsApp group, right? But it is important that you understand that not every single child in your classroom has the ability to imagine. Some children don't have it. Okay, they're very logical, and that's just how they are. Now, like online dating, if you want to sign up on an app to date online, for online dating, an online dating platform, what do? A lot of the times we put our best picture. Just imagine your Instagram, imagine your WhatsApp story, your WhatsApp status, your WhatsApp DP, your Facebook page. Imagine all those things, your Twitter, your Snapchat. What are all these other things that we do, right? Is it your picture that you're like this that you put inside? No, you put a picture like this. Why? Because you want people to see you and connect. You're trying to tell a story with your picture. That's the same thing with creative writing in your classroom. You need to be visible. You need to make it visible. Okay? If it is not visible, the children will not bite. Okay? And you want that person, you know, there's Tinder. I think that's what it's called. There are many different online dating apps. I've never gone on any of them, but Tinder is the one that most people talk about. You swipe on it. People who have it look a certain way. Now, if you don't want a certain set of people to connect with you, guess what? You don't dress or look a certain way on that app. And that's the same thing you must think about for your students. How do you want your students to connect with you? That is how you have to prepare. Okay, so in terms of visibility, you need to say to yourself, what do I need these students to see? How do I need them to see it? Is then talking about preparation. All right, and you must be prepared. If you're not prepared, a lot of the time to get children to connect, it's a tough one. And then they need to connect, which is what I just said. If they do not, if they cannot see it, they cannot connect with it. Okay, when people connect, and that's the same thing with dating as well, right? Again, let's go through that process of dating. They're visible, they're prepared to be seen, and they're prepared to connect. It's a mindset thing at that point. You know what, people are gonna send me a message on Instagram, or on Facebook, or on Twitter, or on WhatsApp, or wherever, Snapchat, wherever, right? So they need to be prepared to begin to receive those sort of messages. And that is that preparation that you've done with the children, right? You need to prepare them to the point where they connect with that thing you're telling them to do. With that picture, with that prompt, they connect with it. And guess what? At that point in time, bingo, creative writing marriage has happened. And then you begin to build on those skills that you are giving to the children. So these are extremely important when you think creative writing. Just remember, creative writing is like an online dating. It's not the first day that you meet this person, although that might be your case, that you tell them to marry you. No, it's not on that first day one. It's something that is built over time. It's a relationship that you're nurturing. That's the same thing with creative writing. You're nurturing the relationship of writing. You're nurturing brain development. You're nurturing creativity. You're managing their creativity. You're managing their imagination. You're helping them think. You're helping them process their thoughts in a sequence, in a pattern. You're helping build their recall. That is what you're doing with creative writing in your classroom. You're building their self-confidence. You're building their expression, which is why creative writing sometimes is not just about writing. They should be able to write. It doesn't have to be a story. It can be drama. They can write a song. They can write a poem. They can even draw. And cartoons. Is it cartoon they call that thing? Like a magazine. Is it a magazine? Comic, like a comic. It's fine. It's fine. Comics are making good money these days. You know, not that it's about money, but it's about expression. So let the children express themselves. All right. Now we're going into the techniques and strategies for creative writing. The first thing is that you need to connect the five senses. Okay, the sense of sight, the sense of your hearing, their sense of touch, you know, their sense of smell, the taste, right? The feelings as well. It's so important that you connect with it. That is how you make it concrete. So what do you need to do? That is why when we are giving creative writing prompts, I think the very first one is write about yourself, write about your family, write about a holiday that you went to, write about something that you want to do in the future. Why do we ask all these questions? Because we want the children to connect. Okay, I would task you with something in this classroom. I would say, beyond just giving these regular things, begin to imagine and ask parents when they come into your classroom. Imagine what a child, a 5-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, whatever the age, begin to imagine. My daughter is stressing me here. Begin to imagine, what are those things that give them joy? What are those things that give them love? Can they write about a playground experience instead? When you're connecting with the parents, you let them know, oh, we're about to go into creative writing exercises, and it will be nice to know what your child really enjoys watching at home, on TV, what game they like to play at home. What are you doing? You're trying to make it concrete for that child. You're trying to connect that child with the essence of who they are, because that is when it begins to make sense for them. All right, so show and tell is also a great technique. So in terms of connecting with the five senses, you can use show and tell as well. For some of you, I'm sure when I showed you the first picture of that cake, some of you could smell the cake. You know, you could even taste the cake itself, right? But that's how it should be. All right. The next thing that you want to do is you want to encourage your children to read. You want to encourage them to read from a very, very early age. You want to also get the parents into that process. All right. The things that you do in the classroom is incomplete if you're not connected to the home. You must say to yourself, how can I connect this to the home? That is something that is extremely important when we're developing creative writing skills. All right. So encourage your students to read, have books, have book exchange sessions in your classroom, have them write something about what they read. Sometimes you want to buy maybe colored sticky notes or colored paper and give it to the children to take it home. Give them colored pencils, let them write with that on a white sheet of paper. That is encouraging them to want to read and to want to write. Okay. Start with something that they have an interest in, which is why I said, have a conversation with the parents. Don't make it regular. All right. Our creative writing, for me, sometimes it gets really boring when all I'm writing about is the same thing over and over and over again. No, I want to write about something else, please. All right. And then have them write regularly. Okay. Remember, it's not how long the writing is. It's the fact that every single day it's getting more creative. It is getting more colorful. And those lines will eventually become more and more and more. They'll begin to fill up pages because it is beginning to make sense and it is flowing better. But at the beginning, it might not be as great as that, but eventually it would flow. Like I mentioned earlier, experiment, right? Don't let it only be about fiction or non-fiction. Let them write a drama. Let them go poetic with you, right? Let them write a movie. Let them do a comic. It doesn't matter. What we want them doing is writing, right? That's what we want them doing. And writing, not writing in itself, but really thinking. That's what we want to happen in our classrooms. We want thinking to happen, right? So in that way, then leave them and let them think and let them write in a way that they can connect with. Let them create memorable characters. And Book Week, for example, is a great way to get children writing. Let them actually write about each other, about the different comics that they've come to Book Week as, the characters that they've come to Book Week as. That is a great one. Let them begin to think about it even from the beginning of the week, right? Or the beginning of the second week. You're building momentum for Book Week or for that day, all right? So those are ways that we can begin to make our creative writing more interesting. When they have written, they can then edit it and revise it, okay? But remember, at the beginning, leave them alone. It is a process. The first draft is never perfect, never perfect, but then they can revise it. But that first draft is where you want them to capture and pour in all of those ideas, okay? Because that is what really matters. And then encourage them. The days you're going to have creative writing something, tell them to bring something from home, okay? And that's so exciting. Let them bring something that they want to write about. Okay, and that way it is now about them. You need to learn as a teacher to take yourself out of the process. Okay, why? If you are in the process all the time, the children would always look to you for support. And that cannot always be the case. You want them to develop some level of independence as they grow older. You want them to take charge of their own learning as they're growing older. Okay, you want to see maturity across their writing, across them as learners. Okay, so and the only way to do that really is to do this sort of things. Tell them, bring something at home that you want to write about. And when they get to school, tell them, or bring something at home that you want your friends to write about. And then they can have those exchanges. But remember, make a note of who brought what so that you can give it back to the right person. And then, of course, experiment with different writing exercises. Okay. Some days start the story and let them finish it. Some days start the beginning and the end and let them put the middle. Some days give them the end. One exercise that we did way back was we had Little Red Riding Hood, and we asked them to change the ending of Little Red Riding Hood, and that was such a successful exercise because the students, they could change the ending in so many different ways, and that was exciting. That's something you want to do. Have you thought about the fact that you can ask them to change the clothing of Little Red Riding Hood? If you had to change the name, what would it be? What should she wear? How about the wolf? Can we change the wolf to another animal? Anything. What are you trying to do? You're trying to connect. You're trying to give them something to think about. That is the essence of thinking. All right, so this is our last slide. And then, of course, we'll open it up and then we can all have a conversation for the next 10, 15 minutes before we wrap up. Remember, creativity is a journey, and so is creative writing, okay? Every child is going to progress in a different way. So we can't expect them to all do the same things. But whilst they're doing these things, can we find a way to have them enjoy it? Can we give them the tools and the guidance they need to keep developing the skills to be the best that they can be? Can we have them even document their process, right? From year one, let them write about their year one. In year two, they take that book with them and write about the experiences in year two. And they keep doing it. Imagine in year six how it would be. Imagine when they're in year 12, how that thing would be. But what are you doing in essence? You're creating writers. Because they'll be thinking, what do I want to write? What do I want to write? So for the graduation gifts, maybe you want to give a really thick book. And every year, maybe that's what you want to do. Keep adding it on and saying my stories in year one, my stories in year two, my stories in year three. And sometimes bring it up. Oh, let's see what you guys have written. You don't necessarily want to read it. You want to check because they might write some very personal things in there. Right? But remember, creative writing is a mode of self-expression, and you really want to give the children an opportunity to express themselves. All right, so that's it been for today's class. I'm really looking forward to seeing as many of you at the School Rewired conference. Yuti, can you please put the links in the chat box? Yes, but thank you all so much. So we'll open the floor now to questions, to comments. Maybe you want to share something with us that you learned. That would be great. So if you do, please raise your hand. We're more than happy to give you the mic at this time. If you have something to say, just raise your hand and we will give you the mic. Or do you want to drop it in the chat box? Does anybody have a question? Does anybody have a comment? Thanks, Ayoni Mofe. Somebody was raising her hand earlier. I think that was Idowu. Do you still want to say something? Okay, fantastic. So great. It's good to have you guys here because apparently nobody wants to ask any questions today. And once again, I'm really waiting to see. Hi, Ayoning Fofe. Good evening. It's good to have you here. I'm expecting to see as many people as possible at the School Rewired conference. It's going to be really amazing. We will. How can you help a child that cannot imagine? That's a difficult one, to be honest. But you begin to build it. You need to first of all determine that they're finding it difficult to imagine. And then what you need to begin to do really for children who find imagination difficult is make it as concrete as possible, right? The same way I put those pictures. If you have a whiteboard in your classroom, for example, put a picture up and tell them, describe for me what you see. It's like when our children are reading and they're doing picture reading. In preschool, there's a lot of picture reading that happens in preschool. You simply put a picture up and you tell them, oh, tell me what you see in this picture. And you hear that they create a totally different picture than what is happening, a story than what is happening in the picture. But it is so interesting and they're so engaged, which is why preschool is so important, right? It's important that we read in preschool, even if it's picture reading. It's very important because it's laying the foundation for later years. All right, so that's a way that you encourage a child that doesn't know how to think, to creative. You really want to put a picture up for them. Tell them, even this is your shirt. Can you write something about your shirt? If your shirt is dirty, how do you feel? Right. So you want to connect it to their emotions because their logic is taking the lead. Connect it to their emotions and see what you can do. What do you think this sweet tastes like? Do you want to write that down for me? And even if it's a few words at a time, remember, every child is different. What you want to see is progress is happening. Yes? Fantastic. A question, is it advisable to give sample of your own piece of writing? So the challenge with giving, and this is a very, very good question. Thank you for asking that. Oh, I see that I missed a question from Oluwadamilola. Sorry, Ayoni Mofe. I'll come to your question, Ayoni Mofe. Let me just answer Damilola's one since I've read it out. The problem with giving your writing sample to students is that they get stuck on your writing sample. Let me tell you guys what happened to me. I was meant to have a conversation with a group of people that I want to do some work with sometime last week, and I wrote down some things I wanted to talk about on my screen. What I plan to do on a Word document. What I plan to do is that while we're speaking, you know how you can split your screen. My plan was to split my screen, have what I had written on one screen, just as my prompt, and then have them on the other screen. It so happened that the software they were using, I couldn't split my screen. For the first few seconds, I was blank. I was the one that wrote those things. It is me. I knew what I wrote. I was blank. And that's the thing that happens with children. If you give them something too early before they can engage their thinking and their creativity, they get stuck on your own. So you don't want to do that. I mean, even sometimes in school, when I'm talking with the team, and then they'll be like, oh, but Miss Keke said, and I'm like, don't say Miss Keke said. I don't want to hear Miss Keke said. Do your own, right? And so sometimes in meetings, I don't start. I have the team speak about their own experiences, share their thoughts before I then speak. So that's the, so you want to guard against them getting stuck on you. Ayonimofe says, please, how can I help year one child, 6 years to write, knowing that the child is still struggling with spelling? So spelling and writing are two different things, okay? If you want the child to write, then you may want the child to develop writing skills. In their second edit, what you can then do is have them correct their spellings. Okay, but if they do the first draft of creative writing and you're stuck on the spellings, they're not going to be creative. They're not going to want to think and express themselves all they're going to be looking at is that are they spelling it correctly or incorrectly. So you want to manage that process. Yes, let them know, just write. I want to see the flow. It needs to make sense. It needs to be fun. Just write. It's okay. Write. Then you then tell them, okay, you know what? Some of us didn't quite pay attention to our spellings. Please take this back and correct your spellings. Okay. And I hope that that would help Ayonimofe. Adebayo says, appreciate. Oh, thank you so much, Adebayo. That's very nice. You're welcome, Oluwadamilola. Oluwada is writing a book review of a story. Yes, a book review. Yeah, it is. It can be an example of creative writing because they're writing it from their thoughts, right? They're following the facts, but it is their writing. So a book review, in the cleanest sense of the word, is not creative writing, but it is opinion-based writing. But it can sort of, we can put it in the bucket of creative writing. You know, I'm fine with doing that because some children need something to hang their thoughts on, and so that's fine. Fantastic. Ayonimofe, thank you very much for that. That was great. Adebayo says, how do I teach traditional stories with predictable structure? What do you mean predictable structure? Like a beginning, a middle, and an end? Is that what you mean by predictable structure? Because predictable structure, there's quite a bit. Yes, ma. Okay. So when you say traditional stories, are you talking about stories like Tales by Moonlight? If you want to ask this question, you can raise your hand and I would be happy to. I mean, we have co-hosts in the house. They would unmute your mic for you. But if you're thinking about the Tales by Moonlight and thinking of how to convert that into a modern story, every Tales by Moonlight, I remember the ones that I've been told, they always sort of follow a pattern and a sequence, you know. So what you want to do is maybe you want to write it out somewhere just so that you can look at the flow and the sequence properly, and then put it inside that structure, beginning, middle, and an end, and then you sort of put the beginning, middle, and an end, and then you sort of put the exits there, so there's a way that they can then exit the story, and that's the best way to do it. Or the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. Oh, so Jack and the Beanstalk does follow the regular pattern. It follows a predictable structure, because we saw at the beginning that, you know, nothing was really happening. That was almost like the intro, and then the intro was, they told you about Jack and the fact that they didn't have money and he was going to sell the cow. I think it was the cow. And on his way, he met a man that said, oh, give me your cow, I'll give you these beans. And that's where the conflict starts off from. And that from that place, that's where the conflict starts, right? Where he's done something totally out of character. He has given away the cow that he was supposed to sell for them to eat in exchange for magic beans. And then he gets home, his mom is livid and she flings them out of the window, you know. And from nowhere, guess what? It begins to grow. He kept climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. You know, and that's just introducing intrigue, introducing all of that conflict. And the children's eyes are going to be like saucers, you know, and then you tell them, what happened next? When he got to the cloud, what happened? And then they'll be looking at you and say, okay, guys, can you tell me one thing that could have happened? You know what? Write it down for me. Write it in a sheet of paper and squeeze it, so that we can open it and it will be magical, you know, depending on the age of the children, of course. And then we can do it like that. Does that help? Adebayo? Yes, Adebayo. So those are ways that you can make an ordinary story then become almost extraordinary. They can always use that. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. I've had a really good time having this session with you. I think the next one we'll do it maybe on WhatsApp. I don't know. You two would connect with us and tell us what we will do with the next session. If you're not part of the WhatsApp group, I would say please join the WhatsApp group. There's a lot of interesting things that happen on there. All right, so have a good evening. Have a lovely long holiday. We're all on holiday on Monday, so have fun, and thank you so much, Mr. Dekunle. And we will connect in the next session. All right. So UT did drop the links in the chat box. So please just scroll up, connect with the links, and then yes, guys, go register for the School Rewired conference. You would have if you had fun with this one, you would have even more fun with our over 27 sessions at the conference. For 4,000 naira for 3 days, that's a steal. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next class. Take care. Bye.